On the day of the reading of the company's contracts, my wife said, "I'm going to take everything that's yours." She said this looking straight into my eyes in front of the lawyers, her financial advisor, and 2 witnesses she herself brought, as if that were an early victory, as if it were enough to declare it to become reality. I just took a deep breath and let her keep talking, because I already knew what was coming next. My name is Marcus. I am 52 years old. I have been CFO of a billion-dollar corporation in Chicago for almost 20 years. I deal with contracts, mergers, acquisitions, and legal disputes every day. I learn to read people before I read numbers. And when you work with money at the highest level, you learn fast that blind trust is a luxury that no one can afford. My wife is 13 years younger than me. We met at a corporate conference in New York. She worked in digital marketing, was charismatic, beautiful, smart. Or at least I thought she was smart. At first, she really seemed interested in me. We talked about everything. She laughed at my jokes. I supported myself in difficult decisions. It felt genuine. I married her 3 years later. It was a simple but well-structured marriage. I had already learned some lessons in life. I'd seen fellow executives lose half of their wealth in poorly planned divorces. So I insisted on the prenuptial contract. Not out of mistrust, but just in case. She signed without hesitation. At the time, she even joked, "I don't want your money, Marcus, I want you." In the early years, everything seemed to work. She participated in corporate events with me. We traveled together, we had a comfortable routine. But little by little, something changed. She started asking different questions. Questions about the company, about my actions, about executive bonuses, about who would get what if something happened to me. At first, I thought it was natural curiosity. But then came the attempts to access my corporate email. I found out why our IT department monitors everything. She tried to reset my password 3 times. 3. Using her laptop, connected to her home Wi-Fi as if no one would notice. After that, she started attending financial planning classes. I thought it was strange, but I let it go. Until he discovered that the professor was a consultant specializing in high net worth divorces. A guy who taught executive wives how to identify loopholes in prenuptial contracts, track hidden assets, and put emotional pressure to get advantageous deals. That's when I understood that it wasn't paranoia. It was strategy. She was getting ready, and I thought I didn't understand anything, but I understood everything. I just didn't react. Because when someone thinks they're fooling you, the best move is to let them keep believing it. Let them expose themselves. Let them make mistakes thinking they are winning. So I started to observe, silently. I noticed that she started recording our conversations without me knowing. I noticed that he started to provoke arguments at strategic moments, always trying to make me say something that could be used against me later. I noticed that she wrote everything down, dates, values, meetings, as if he were putting together a dossier. And worst of all, she began to threaten divorce. Not once. Every week it was the same thing. "Maybe we should break up, Marcus. I don't think we're compatible anymore. I deserve someone who values me more." Always out of nowhere. Always loaded with drama. Always waiting for me to beg her to stay. Or that I offered something in exchange for the peace in the marriage. She thought she was in emotional control. That I was the older man in love, dependent on her to feel relevant. She really believed she could manipulate me like that. But the truth is that I was already tired, not fighting, to pretend that he did not see. Until one day she crossed the line. She texted me saying she was going to file for divorce and that she hoped for a fair division of everything we've built together. Built, as if she had put a single penny into the company. As if she had worked a single hour on the contracts that earned me millions in bonuses. As if she had risked something other than her own pride. I calmly replied, "All right. Let's solve this in a civilized way." She loved the answer. He thought I had surrendered, that it was going to be easy, that it was enough to press a little harder and she would leave there rich. That's when I proposed to schedule an official meeting. With the company's lawyers, with the legal documents, with everything registered. She agreed right away, because she thought that was going to be the stage for her victory. And it was right there, in that glass-enclosed conference room on the 23rd floor, that everything fell apart for her. She entered confidently. Flawless makeup, expensive clothes, that posture of someone who has rehearsed the scene 1,000 times in his head. She brought a lawyer that she hired herself. I brought that financial advisor. She even brought 2 friends as witnesses. as if that would intimidate someone. He sat on the other side of the table, crossed his arms, and stared at me with that look of defiance. And that's when she said, "I'm going to take everything that's yours." The lawyers were silent. Her consultant gave a yellow smile. Her friends looked at her as if they weren't sure if it was time to applaud or back off. I just tilted my head slightly and said, "All right, let's see what you're really entitled to." The company's lead lawyer, a man in his 60s and a former federal prosecutor, opened the briefcase. He took the first roll. He adjusted his glasses, and he began to read aloud. "Responsibility, title, and full ownership of this company remain solely in the name of Mr. Marcus Dwayne Hamilton." Silence, he continued. "Preferred shares, common shares, and interests in executive funds are registered solely under the CPF and signature of the aforementioned holder." Her face began to change. "The prenuptial contract signed on June 15, 2020 remains valid, unchanged, and legally shielded, according to irrevocability clauses present in Annexes A, B, and C." She blinked fast. He took a deep breath. He tried to keep his composure, but the lawyer did not stop. "All assets acquired before and during the marriage, including real estate, vehicles, investments, and copyrights, are protected under the legislation of total separation of property, without any possibility of community of property." She turned to her lawyer, as if he expected him to do something, but he only looked at his own papers, and he said nothing, because I had nothing to say. She tried to speak. He opened his mouth, but what came out was a faint voice, almost inaudible. "But I thought that..." The company's lawyer closed the briefcase. He looked at her with that cold politeness of someone who has seen this movie 1,000 times. "What did you think exactly?" She did not answer, because at that moment everything fell apart. The strategy, trust, the illusion of control, everything. She really thought she was going to leave there a millionaire. He thought it was enough to shout, pressure, make a scandal. She thought I was another distracted executive who would let her take half of her assets just to avoid public embarrassment. But she forgot an important detail. I built this life dealing with people who try to deceive me every day, and I never ever let anyone catch me off guard. When she realized that she had no right to anything, the silence that formed in that room was so heavy that it seemed that the air had become denser. I saw her hand tremble slightly as she tried to grab the water bottle on the table. I saw how she looked away, as if looking for a way out that didn't exist, and in that instant I understood something that took me years to accept. She never loved me. She loved the idea of what she could achieve with me. She loved the comfort. She loved social projection. She loved the status. But me, as a man, never. She only loved what she thought she could get out of me. And at that table, with everyone looking at her as if they were watching the fall of an actress who always thought she dominated the stage, she realized that the play was over, and it was not with applause. I continued to sit, keeping calm. It was almost strange how I felt. There was no anger. There was no relief. It was something firmer, more solid. The certainty that I had made every decision right, even when they doubted me. Even when she said I was paranoid, controlling, or cold. I always knew that in the end the truth comes out. People driven by greed always reveal themselves alone. There is no need to shout. There is no need to confront. Just let their haste do the work. She tried to regain some control of the situation. He straightened his posture, took a deep breath, and blurted out, "That doesn't make sense. You can't just keep it all." Her lawyer turned his head slowly, as if watching a fire start with no water around. He knew he was lost. She knew she was lost. And I knew that even so, she would try to fight a little more. It was her profile. People like this never admit the fall right away. They always believe that there is a hidden card, a catchphrase, some emotional trick that will turn the tide. But in that environment, with signed documents, registered dates, and witnesses present, emotional manipulation is useless. There, only the facts mattered. I put my hands on the table and spoke as calmly as I had throughout the process. I never wanted war. I never wanted a fight. You chose that when you decided to try to knock me in the back. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if the words had hit exactly where it hurt. Perhaps for the first time she understood that she was not the victim of the story, that it was not the wronged wife, that she was not the forgotten woman. She was the person who tried to destroy the one who shared the house, the name, and the life with her. And there, in front of experienced lawyers and solid contracts, there was not enough emotional narrative to reverse this. Her financial advisor tried to intervene, Maybe we can renegotiate some points to make it easier. I raised my hand and he stopped talking at the same second. He knew there was nothing to negotiate. He knew he had bet on the wrong customer. He knew there was no gap to exploit. I just looked at him and said, "What's mine remains mine. The law guarantees this, and you know." He nodded, even if discreetly. It was his way of admitting defeat without verbalizing. After that, he slowly collected his papers as if trying to disappear. She then finally really collapsed. The expression has changed completely. His face, once confident, turned pale. His voice faltered. "Marcus, we had a life together." I felt the intention behind the phrase. It was the late emotional appeal. The attempt to build a bridge that she herself burned. But I had already made this crossing alone, and he had arrived on the other side a long time ago. This time, I was the one who looked away first. "Yes, we did, and I respected every part of it. You chose to turn it into war." She ran her hand through her hair, nervous. She looked at her friends, hoping for support, but none of them said anything. They were all uncomfortable, realizing that they had entered a legal theater where the protagonist fell and took with her everyone who believed in her narrative. I observed their discomfort, but I didn't feel any pleasure in it. It was not victory. It was simply the inevitable result of miscalculated choices. People driven by greed forget that the other side also thinks, also analyzes, also acts. I knew that sooner or later she would try to use the last resort, public victimization. She was always good in this role. But there, with everything documented, there was no room for lies. She took another deep breath and said, "I just wanted security." I replied firmly without raising my voice. "Security is not built by stealing from the other." The company's lawyer arranged the folder and signaled that he would end the meeting. But before he finished, my wife, or ex-wife depending on what would happen from then on, lowered her head and finally accepted that she had lost. I stood up slowly. She did the same, but still avoiding my gaze. We walked to the door of the room. When I touched the doorknob, she whispered behind me, barely perceptible, "What's going to happen now?" I turned my face just enough for her to see me speak. Now each one goes with what really belongs to him. And for the first time since it all began, she didn't answer anything. As I left that conference room, I felt something I didn't expect to feel at that moment. A tiredness that wasn't physical, but mental. I had spent months observing, analyzing, waiting, preparing. And now that it had all come to light, there was no sense of triumph. There was no euphoria. It was just a cold realization of what I already knew. I was living with someone who had never really been by my side. I walked to the elevator without looking back. She came a few steps behind me, trying to keep up, but not knowing what to say. Her friends stayed behind, probably discussing among themselves how they had been dragged into a situation they didn't fully understand. The financial advisor and her lawyer also said nothing. They knew that the matter was closed, that there was no strategy, resource, appeal, or emotional theater that could change what was documented. The elevator arrived, the doors opened, and I entered. She joined soon after. We were silent as the floor changed, number by number. I kept my eyes fixed on the panel, not wanting to generate more conversation. When the elevator stopped on the ground floor, she stepped in front of me and finally managed to say something. "You didn't have to do it that way." I stood there for a second, taking a deep breath, and replied just as calmly as before, "I just let the truth come out. You did the rest." She closed her mouth as if I'd taken the air out of her. We stepped out into the huge lobby of the Chicago office building, and the immensity of the hall only made the emptiness between the two of us more evident. She walked beside me, but without the courage to look directly at me. Her posture, once confident, was now almost fragile. Not because I wanted to see it, but because it was clear that the fantasy she had created had finally fallen apart. And when a lie loses the stage, those who live from it also lose their language. We stood side by side for a few seconds until she finally asked in a thin voice, "So that's it?" I stopped, turned my face to her a little, and replied, "Yes, because there is nothing left to fight. You destroyed what existed before you tried to destroy what was mine." She looked away, looking at the building's huge glass panels as if looking for some explanation. But there was no explanation. There was no justification. There were only choices. Hers. She tried to continue the conversation. "I know I made a mistake, but you could have been more understanding." The phrase moved me for a moment, but not in the way she imagined. It was absurd. She was asking for understanding after, trying to take everything I've built. I replied more firmly, understanding is not synonymous with allowing abuse. You have confused goodness with weakness. And he thought I didn't understand. She finally stared at me, her eyes watering, and for the first time I saw something real. Fear. Not the fear of losing myself, but the fear of losing comfort, the standard of living, the doors that opened for her because I carried my last name. I walked out of the building and the icy Chicago wind rose through the collar of my jacket. I always liked the cold of that place. The cold keeps me alert, aware, clean. I walked to the parking lot as she came behind me, trying to stay close. Her every step felt like an internal contest between pride and despair. When we got to my car, she put her hand on his door and asked, "Are you going to leave me like this? Nothing?" I put my hands in my pockets and replied with complete honesty, "I didn't take anything from you. You just couldn't take what was never yours." She took a deep breath, but this time she didn't argue. It was hard to argue when all the facts were against her. I opened the car door, but she took a step forward, blocking it for a moment. "Marcus, please. I don't know what will become of my life now." Her voice finally had no script, no manipulation. It was raw, but still it wasn't enough to erase everything she had tried to do. I said what was already decided. "You will live with the choices you made." Like every adult. She backed off a little, as if the sentence had been harsher than she expected. But still she remained there, still, fixing her gaze on the ground. I got in the car, but before closing the door, I looked at her. "And there's one more thing." She looked up slowly. I continued, "I'm not going to expose you. I'm not going to make a scandal. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to use any of this to humiliate you. It's not who I am. But I will also not allow you to destroy me to save your image." She swallowed. Her hands trembled slightly. For the first time, it seemed that he understood the weight of everything. I closed the door and started the car. She remained there until she disappeared in their view mirror. As I drove, I felt a kind of comfortable silence inside me, the one that only appears when you leave a place where you should no longer be. I knew that wasn't the end of the story. It was just the end of the illusion she tried to build. Now the rest would come, the formal confrontation, the divorce, the division of life that we still had in common. But I was already prepared. She could no longer surprise me. And on that wheel, crossing the wide avenues of the city, I realized something simple. Sometimes, what seems like an emotional defeat is just freedom starting to breathe. Bench and take a deep breath. The house was silent, and for the first time in a long time, that silence didn't feel heavy. He seemed necessary. It felt like mine. I walked around the room slowly, taking in every detail. Carefully chosen furniture, paintings I'd bought in work trips, objects that were part of my life long before she entered it. I realized how much I had allowed someone who didn't build anything here to almost dominate everything. And for an instant, I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger at having been deceived. Relief to have finally seen everything clearly. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the couch. The mind was still spinning through the events of the day. The way she entered that room thinking she had already won. The confidence that disappeared from her face as the lawyer read each clause. The desperate attempt to regain control when he realized he had nothing in his hands. And as I relived it, I realized an uncomfortable truth. I spent years being too gentle, too patient, believing that love could shape character. But character is not shaped with affection. He reveals himself with circumstances. My cell phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from her. Short, without punctuation, like someone typing, crying, or with trembling hands. "Can we talk tomorrow?" I stared at the screen for a few seconds and felt the answer emerge within me clearly. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pride. It was simply self-preservation. I didn't need that cycle again. He didn't need the manipulations, the excuses, the rehearsed speeches. I deleted the notification without responding. Tomorrow I wouldn't change anything that was already decided. I got up and walked to the bedroom. I took off my tie, left my jacket hanging, and looked at myself in the mirror. There was something different in my look, a firmness that I hadn't seen for months, maybe years. When you live with someone who tries to bring you down quietly, you start to diminish parts of yourself without realizing it. He begins to recalculate every word, every gesture. He begins to walk, stepping on glass. And when he finally leaves this environment, he feels his own spine getting straighter, his chest lighter, his mind cleaner. It was like I was coming back to myself. I sat on the edge of the bed and let my body relax. I knew that the next few days would be full of paperwork, meetings, and practical decisions. The divorce still needed to be formalized. The lawyers would still have work, and she would probably try a few more emotional moves before accepting reality. But none of this scared me anymore. Not after what happened today. She had shown all the cards, and they were all empty. I picked up my cell phone again and thought about sending a short message to the lawyer, asking us to start the process later that week. But I stopped for a moment. I closed my eyes and let my breathing slow. I realized I didn't have to sort it all out that night. For the first time in a long time, I could simply exist. No emotional alarm. No constant tension. Without having to evaluate intentions hidden behind each sentence, I lay down and stared at the ceiling. The truth is that I already knew that the relationship had ended long before the meeting. All that was missing was the moment that defined everything, and today was that moment. Not because of the papers, nor the witnesses, nor her posture, but because when she said, "I'm going to take everything that's yours," she showed who she really was. He showed without a mask, without emotional makeup, without theater. And once you see the truth, you can't go back to seeing illusion. I closed my eyes and let my body sink into the mattress. The day had been long, heavy, and decisive, but at the same time, it had been liberating. Each person who tries to take you down unsuccessfully ends up only breaking down their own facade. She tried to destroy my financial life, my reputation, and my security. And in the end, he only destroyed his own image. Before going to sleep, one last sentence flashed through my mind, clear as if it were being said out loud. Sometimes silence is not escape. It is protection. And that night, for the first time in many months, I slept peacefully.